Learn English slowly and clearly. Listen, repeat, and feel the words. Repeat this video every day to improve your English. The story of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein's case is one of the most controversial and disturbing scandals of modern history, involving wealth, power, sexual abuse, and systemic failure. His life and crimes exposed how influential individuals can avoid accountability for years, even when serious crimes are widely known. Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. He did not come from a wealthy background and initially worked as a mathematics teacher. However, during the late 1970s and 1980s, he entered the world of finance and gradually became extremely rich. The exact source of his wealth has never been fully explained, which contributed to public suspicion about his activities. Epstein eventually gained access to elite social circles, forming relationships with politicians, business leaders, academics, and celebrities. Behind his public image as a successful financier, Epstein was running a long-term operation of sexual abuse. Over many years, he recruited underage girls, some as young as 14, under the promise of money, gifts, or opportunities. These girls were often invited to his homes under the pretext of giving massages, which then led to sexual exploitation. Testimonies later revealed that Epstein created an organized system designed to manipulate, control, and silence his victims. In 2008, Epstein was first arrested in Florida and charged with crimes related to sexual abuse of minors. Despite the seriousness of the accusations, he received an unusually lenient plea deal. He served only 13 months in jail, with permission to leave the facility for several hours a day. This agreement also protected potential accomplices from prosecution. The deal became a symbol of how wealth and influence can interfere with justice. Public outrage resurfaced in 2019 when federal prosecutors arrested Epstein again, this time on charges of sex trafficking of minors. Unlike the earlier case, these charges could have resulted in a life sentence. As more victims came forward, the media began to investigate Epstein's connections and the possible involvement of other powerful individuals. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell while awaiting trial. Authorities ruled his death a suicide, but the circumstances surrounding it raised serious questions. Failures in jail supervision and broken security cameras led many people to believe that critical information died with him. His death prevented a full trial and left many victims without the justice they sought. In conclusion, the story of Jeffrey Epstein is not only about one man's crimes, but about a broader failure of institutions meant to protect the vulnerable. His case revealed how power, money, and influence can delay or deny justice. Although Epstein is dead, the impact of his actions continues to affect survivors and raises important questions about accountability in modern society. Abuse, power, and institutional failure. As Epstein's wealth and social influence expanded, so did the scale of his criminal activities. For years, he used his luxurious homes, private jets, and exclusive lifestyle to create an environment in which young girls were easily manipulated. Many victims were recruited from vulnerable backgrounds and were promised money, education, or professional opportunities. Once inside Epstein's properties, they were subjected to sexual abuse and psychological control. This system was not accidental, it was carefully structured to ensure silence, dependence, and fear, allowing the abuse to continue for decades. A critical factor that enabled Epstein's crimes was the protection he received from powerful institutions. Despite multiple reports and complaints, law enforcement agencies failed to act decisively for years. The 2008 plea deal in Florida demonstrated how legal systems can be influenced by wealth and political connections. By avoiding federal charges and receiving minimal punishment, Epstein was effectively allowed to continue his behavior. This outcome deeply damaged public trust in the justice system and highlighted the unequal treatment between the powerful and the powerless. Furthermore, Epstein's extensive network raised concerns about complicity beyond his own actions. His close relationships with influential figures created an atmosphere of intimidation and secrecy. Although many names were associated with Epstein through documents and testimonies, very few individuals were thoroughly investigated or held accountable. This absence of consequences reinforced the perception that Epstein was protected by more than just his lawyers. It suggested a broader culture of silence and denial. In this context, Epstein's case represents more than an individual criminal story. It exposes systemic weaknesses in institutions meant to protect minors and uphold justice. The failure to intervene earlier allowed irreversible harm to occur, demonstrating the dangerous consequences of prioritizing reputation and power over human rights and accountability. Arrest, death, and lasting impact. In 2019, renewed public attention and investigative journalism led to the reopening of Jeffrey Epstein's case at the federal level. Prosecutors charged him with sex trafficking of minors, alleging that he had operated an organized network to exploit underage girls across multiple states. Unlike previous legal actions, these charges carried the possibility of life imprisonment. For the first time, Epstein faced the real prospect of being held fully accountable for his crimes, and many victims hoped the trial would finally expose the truth. However, on August 10, 2019, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell while awaiting trial. Authorities officially ruled his death a suicide, but the circumstances surrounding it generated widespread controversy. Reports revealed serious failures within the prison system, including malfunctioning surveillance cameras and guards who failed to follow required monitoring procedures. These irregularities fueled public suspicion and reinforced the belief that Epstein's death prevented crucial information from becoming public, particularly regarding the involvement of other powerful individuals. Epstein's death marked the end of the criminal case against him, but it did not end the broader pursuit of justice. Many survivors continued to seek accountability through civil lawsuits, and the case prompted renewed discussions about the treatment of sexual abuse victims within the legal system. Additionally, Epstein's longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, was later convicted for her role in facilitating the abuse, demonstrating that responsibility extended beyond Epstein alone. Ultimately, the Epstein case left a lasting impact on society. It exposed profound weaknesses in institutional oversight, prison security, and legal accountability for elite individuals. More importantly, it forced public recognition of the voices of survivors who had been ignored for years. The case serves as a reminder that justice delayed can become justice denied, and that transparency and accountability are essential to preventing similar abuses in the future. Social consequences and lessons learned. The Jeffrey Epstein case had significant social and cultural consequences that extended far beyond the courtroom. It sparked global discussions about sexual exploitation, abuse of power, and the systemic failures that allow such crimes to continue unchecked. Many people began to question how institutions designed to protect the vulnerable could repeatedly fail, especially when influential individuals are involved. As a result, the case became a powerful example of how justice systems can be compromised by wealth and status. One of the most important outcomes of the Epstein scandal was the increased visibility of survivors' voices. For years, victims were ignored, dismissed, or intimidated into silence. Public attention in 2019 created a space for these individuals to share their experiences and demand accountability. This shift contributed to a broader cultural movement that emphasized believing survivors and challenging long-standing patterns of denial surrounding sexual abuse. Additionally, the case forced a re-evaluation of accountability among elites. Epstein's connections to powerful figures raised difficult questions about complicity, silence, and moral responsibility. Even when legal consequences were limited, the reputational damage and public scrutiny highlighted the importance of ethical responsibility beyond formal punishment. Society began to recognize that preventing abuse requires not only laws, but also transparency, courage, and institutional reform. In conclusion, the story of Jeffrey Epstein is not merely the account of a single criminal, but a warning about the dangers of unchecked power. It demonstrates how injustice can persist when systems prioritize influence over human dignity. The lasting lesson of this case is clear: protecting the vulnerable must always take precedence over protecting the powerful, and justice must be pursued consistently, regardless of social status.